Well, welcome to another segment of Campaign Catch-Up. We're taking a look at everything that's been going on in the campaign in the last week. Joining me today is CBN News DC Bureau Chief Dana Ritter and CBN's David Brody. And David, I'll start with you. RFK gave his endorsement. Obviously, Tulsi Gabbard just also gave her endorsement to President Trump. Does this move the needle at all?
Well, it could. I mean, this election is going to be won at the margins. By the way, I like how you kind of introed this segment, Dan. You were like, and here we are again, kind of like we're in a therapy session, and here we go. It could. I mean, look, I think what's remarkable to me is how much this has shifted from 2016 to 2024. I mean, in 2016, it was Mike Pence and the evangelicals and got to get out the base. I mean, no one really knew Trump, wasn't quite sure what he would do. And so he had to secure the base. Well, he thinks he has the base. And so now he's broadening it out, going to Democrats. I mean, he was broadening it out, obviously, in 2016 and 2020, but this is full throttle broadening. I mean, this is RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. This is not the Republican Party that, back in the day, the George W. Bush Republican Party. This is just not it anymore. And, it's interesting. I was doing an interview earlier with Dennis Kucinich, who, of course, was a congressman for a very long time, very liberal congressman, libertarian, but liberal for sure. And as he's talking about anti-war and he's talking about Ukraine, and he's talking about, just all these different litany of issues, I said to myself, my goodness, he's sounding like today's Republican Party. And this is Dennis Kucinich, who's a big-time liberal, was a Democrat, ran for president a couple times. So, I mean, that gives you a sense of where Trump has taken this party, and Tulsi Gabbard is just another Democrat coming on board. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a Dennis Kucinich being one of the next Democrats, and there's going to be more. But tell you what, boy, how times have changed for sure.
Yeah, it has, and I think David, my tone in the intro there is just sort of, it's my exasperation at all of the stuff that's coming in at once. It's like it's an arduous task to keep up with it all. So, Dana, what's your reaction to these two endorsements here for Trump?
Well, I think they're interesting, but I don't know if they're going to move like a full-size needle, maybe like a small needle in a haystack, if you will. I mean, let's be real. RFK wasn't pulling big numbers. I think in most cases, he wasn't even pulling number. But, when you are in a fight for your presidential political life, you're not going to turn down an endorsement, right? I think what's interesting now is to see in the future, if Trump wins, if there's room at that big cabinet table or somewhere in the administration for RFK Jr. and what that might say about what the plans are for the future.
Yeah, you do get that sense that maybe there's some cabinet positions, maybe there's some administration positions on the line here. David, she's talking about this election. You need every endorsement you can get. It's gonna, by all accounts, probably be close one way or the other. So, what are the numbers looking like? What are the latest kind of polling things that you're seeing that you're interested in right now?
Well, I mean, once again, you're seeing Kamala Harris kind of leading at the national level as a real clear politics average. Maybe she's up a couple more points than normal. Well, I say than normal. You've seen 2 points, 3 points. We've seen some as high as 5 or 6 points. But the national numbers really don't mean much. And I think it's really important to understand that. I mean, you start to factor in places like California, New York, and some other big liberal bastions. National numbers mean nothing. Also, remember, Trump does not poll as well as the actual numbers that come in for Trump, because a lot of folks still, believe it or not, don't want to admit to a pollster that they're voting for Trump. So I think you got to take that with a grain of salt. Having said that, look, I mean, Kamala Harris still has a lot of work to do. I mean, she is down among men. She's down among Hispanics. She's down among Black voters. I mean, across the board. And when I mean down, I'm talking about as compared to Biden in 2020 at this stage. And so, you look at it all and you still say to yourself, well, what something's got to give at some point. These voters are going to go some way, and I think that, or somewhere, and I think that goes back to what we talked about with the Democrats. I mean, if you get a bigger tent, and this has been the whole idea of the big tent philosophy. I mean, both parties subscribe to it. A bigger tent means more votes, or at least more potential for votes. And I think that's what they're hoping for here. I mean, they weren't quite able to get it done in 2020 with just that conservative base, that evangelical base, and others. I think broadening the tent will probably help them. But I think ultimately it's just going to come down to a bunch of swing states. And listen, this is just too close to call. It just really is. And I think it's important to understand that we just don't know what the electorate is going to look like. I mean, if we had a better sense of what the electorate would look like, then we could better game it out. But right now, we don't know. And therefore, the polls that we're seeing, the polls are actually trying to predict what the electorate's going to look like, because that's how they poll. They poll based on what they think the electorate's going to be. But if the electorate is something different, then the polls are off. So we just don't know at this point.
Yeah. And when they do these polling, by the way, do they still do it by phone? Do you guys know? Do they do it by phone? I just want to know who answers their phone and does the poll. Like, I just
a lot of it is also done by text message now.
Okay.
Yes.
And I've actually received some of them. So sometimes you get questions on, are you going to be voting? And then I've even gotten them where they test certain message phrases. So, what do you think about this phrase versus that phrase? So I agree with David. I think it's all about the swing states, and it's all about who turns out to vote in this handful of states that you get sick of us talking about. I think, there are a couple of groups to watch. I think women are really important to watch. And I think also the split between, the way the pollsters characterize it is educated or uneducated. Those aren't very friendly terms, but college educated is what they mean. And I think that historically does break one way or the other. And if they can move the needle on either one of those in those specific states, that could make or break it.
I would just say quickly that part of the problem for Kamala Harris here potentially could be is that the map is expanding or had it expanded not in her direction. In other words, Nevada is in play. 6 electoral votes. That's important. And it may come down to some state in the Sun Belt, actually. Nevada was in the blue territory in 2020. That is now leaning Trump, and it's been leaning Trump pretty consistently. So if Trump is able to flip 6 electoral votes, that's going to make Kamala Harris's path much more difficult. That means she's probably, it's a long story, but she's probably going to have to win 2 of the 3 Rust Belt states, and she'll have to win another Sun Belt state, whether it be Arizona, Georgia, or North Carolina. That is not easy, but put it this way, it's a lot easier than it would have been for Biden. So look at it that way, I guess, if you're a Democrat.
All right,
and I think I was just going to make a quick point, and that is, we saw Kamala's campaign come out with the no tax on tips promise.
Yeah.
Was originally a policy that was proposed by Donald Trump, and that could very well be her trying to court that Nevada vote. There's a lot of workers that applies to there.
Yeah, definitely. And Dana, we were talking earlier. Where is Kamala was trending on Kamala? It's trending on X, and they do seem like they have an interview on the books scheduled for this week. So at what point are we going to see more of these interviews? And what do you expect to see going forward, maybe even from their campaign, but also from the media, as far as them ramping up sort of calls to get more details on the policy positions? They're still kind of vague on all, the economic platform they put out there has been kind of called vague and saying people need more details. And then that's about it. So where do you see, and when do you see that sort of pressure to give more and to talk more start to ramp up?
Well, I think it's ramping up now. I mean, the fact that Where's Kamala is trending on Twitter, that's coming from the people, right? That's not even coming from right-wing media or, media sources, but people do want to hear from her and they do have questions. I think especially people that want to know more about her. They just had this convention. I think they did a nice job connecting her with her story and her husband and Tim Walz. But I think people do want to know, if I'm going to, change how I would traditionally vote and vote for you, what am I voting for exactly? And that's a fair question. I think, from what I've heard, there is going to be an interview with Kamala and Walz together. It's been reported that it's going to be with someone from NBC this week. I don't know who that's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Lester Holt level, the host of NBC Nightly News. That would be a pretty high profile interview. So I think she'll do some of these, but remember, we were just talking about that battle in the swing states. Don't be surprised if their media strategy is more local. Local interviews with local radio, local television stations, trying to get to those voters specifically, and just letting the national media do the cheerleading that we have seen them do. Let's be honest,
David, your response to that, David? What do you think on the whole media pressure and the
Well,
people pressure for her to give more details?
well, the question is it going to be an interview or is it going to be interviews with a plural? That'll be interesting to watch. Maybe they'll do one interview and they'll say, "Hey, we did an interview." I don't think so. I think they'll give multiple ones, but that's something to watch. Also, the other thing to watch is, okay, so she gives an interview, but what are the questions and what are the follow-ups? Like how hard is this interview going to be exactly? And, because at that point, if it's just kind of a milquetoast interview and it's not much of anything, the Kamala Walz campaign can say, "Hey, well, we did an interview," and you can stop harping about that. Well, yeah, you did, but you were asked what color tree you liked the best. So I'm not quite sure. We have to wait. I think the devil's in the details a little bit on these interviews.
All right,
Yeah.
David. Stick with you here. Go ahead, Dana. Did you want to add
Oh,
more
I
on
was
that
just
one?
going to say another thing is I wouldn't be surprised if they do this one this week and then kind of hang tight through the debate. Just try to ride that wave that they're on. Why would they not?
Yes.
Yeah. And David, that's where I was going to go next was the debate here. We've got a little back and forth now. The negotiations going on about a hot mic. Tell me what's going on here.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just a matter of whether or not they want the mics to be, open mic night, if you will, or closed. And, it's interesting because Trump normally loves the mic open at all times. And now they're the ones that want it closed. And let's be honest, Trump doesn't care. It's his campaign that cares. They thought he did much better in that debate with Biden because he was able to be disciplined. Well, was it him that was being disciplined or was it the technology that was being disciplined? It's called a microphone that's actually shut off. So you have to be disciplined. And I think that's obviously what they want. Though I must tell you, I'm not sure if it works as well this time around with Kamala Harris. I mean, she's going to be aggressive. And so if she's going to be aggressive, I think if his mic is muted, I think that takes away an element for him, actually, in this scenario. I think with Biden, hey, look, let him talk because it was not between 10 and 4 and you never know what was going to happen. But in this case, with Kamala, look, I think you kind of go knuckle to knuckle, but, you just go right there and you just let him have it. And we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a strategy both ways. It's harder to say, but I think the debate will happen. I don't think, look, Trump will look weak if he doesn't do the debate.
Yeah.
And I think that will take precedence over everything. I think there's just a bunch of bluster, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I think it would be, especially after Kamala really sort of challenged Trump and kind of said, like, what are you scared to debate me? I forget her exact quote. It was something along those lines. So, yeah, if he then did back out, that wouldn't look very good. But I agree with you, David. I think the microphone situation in the Biden-Trump debate really did help Trump in that situation because Biden wasn't able to be tight. He wasn't able to hit the mark. He wasn't able to hit the post, so to speak. And Trump is a media guy. Like he knows how to play this game. And so he can hit that and he can hit something kind of, with an acerbic wit and sort of get it really in there quick. So I don't know that I agree. I don't think that necessarily is going to work with Kamala. Dana, do you see the same thing or do you see it differently?
I mean, I could see it either way, but I hope that I'll tell you what I hope for. I hope they leave them open. I think that would just give us a truer sense of the two of them measuring up side by side. I think that it's going to be interesting to see who jabs first and then who gets under whose feathers first, because I think it'll happen both ways. And I think that, style matters in this election. And I think that debate gives us an opportunity to see that from both sides. But I also think that both of these campaigns want people to be paying attention to the debates. And so any little blips like this that they can dole out there for all of us to keep talking about it, I think helps both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And do we think it's going to be more than one debate? I mean, remember, traditionally, of course, it's 3 debates. They've having a hard time kind of coming to agreements on just the one. Are we going to see more?
I can't imagine. I think this is it.
I don't think so either. I mean, I think Trump will continue to ask for it. We are going to have a VP debate as well.
True.
So we'll have that, and that'll be, a VP debate.
That is really interesting. I mean, it's an interesting trend in the country to see, I guess with social media and all these other ways have connection points to audiences across the country during an election season. Maybe the feeling is that debate is less and less important. They can control the narratives better in other ways. So, all right, guys, before we go, anything else that we've got to hit here before we go and try to catch up on everything next week?
Well, I mean, there's just so much. No, I mean, I think we really hit the main points. I just think that we have to just wait and see how this the abortion stuff plays out. And what I mean by that is specifically, Trump talked about reproductive rights, which is, I mean, talk about a slap in the face to pro-lifers. I mean, to use the pro-choice lingo, I think that is worth monitoring for sure. And that's just one in a cascade of things that he's done, coming from, quote, the most pro-life president ever. So I think the question at this point, Dan, will be, they think, the Trump campaign thinks it's going to help them with moderate suburban women. The flip side of that is, will it suppress some of his turnout with evangelical women, whether it be in the suburbs or others, and not just evangelical women, men too. So, and if this is an election won at the margins, I mean, you can play that game, knock yourself out, but I think it's a dangerous game to play because you're not. The truth of the matter is, are you really going to win the pro-choice, anti-Trump woman in the suburbs by saying I'm for reproductive rights? If you're Trump, you're not going to win these people. I mean, these people are not going to vote for you all of a sudden. Go, oh, you know what? Maybe he is going to be good for it. No, he's not. I mean, I think they know that. So I'm not quite sure what favors it does the Trump campaign at this point. My take, personally.
Yeah, I mean, Dana, we know abortion has kind of been tapped as sort of a big issue. That's, it was the midterm issue that everyone's kind of attributed to potentially some gains for Democrats at the midterms. Do you see this? How do you see Trump getting around this problem that David just posed?
I agree with David. I don't think Trump is going to pick up any pro-choice people by, talking in this way. But I do think that he puts himself at risk for losing some pro-lifers who don't really like him, but were supporting him because they really care about that issue and felt like he was stronger on that. And now he's showing, that basically there's two pro-choice candidates here.
Yeah.
He's saying follow your heart. I mean, that's a pro-choice position. So
right.
I think he's got to be careful. And I think that some of the evangelical leaders and conservative Christian leaders who helped to get him into office, helped him to stay in office, are not happy with this. And they have big email lists and text lists.
Yeah.
He does need to be careful. Be careful with this. He might be fire more than they realize.
And not only that, but we talk about evangelical, and when we talk about evangelical, we're also talking about some pro-life Catholics as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the Catholic vote specifically come election night, because as the Catholic vote goes, at least in the modern day presidential elections, the candidate wins the Catholic vote wins the general election. So let's see what that Catholic vote is like, especially in places like Pennsylvania and in places like Wisconsin. Even Michigan to a degree. I think that is where he could get tripped up potentially. If that's down a little bit, I'd be curious to see. Once again, I think he thinks he has evangelicals and pro-life Catholics in the bag, and for the most part he does. But if elections are won at the margins, hey, 1,000 votes in Pennsylvania, you know what? I tell you what, could be a different ballgame.
And just a few of them stay home. They're unenthusiastic. They stay home.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, there's a lot going on. David Brody, Dana Ritter, appreciate you stopping by to break it all down. We'll see you again next week.
See you, Dan.
All right. Bye.